Okay, one of the things we were doing with Space Railway was looking at the down Earth issues, and I think that was part of what we saw in Orlando. There was other people had concepts of how do you do the down Earth thing. If you saw Pete's first briefing, he said that, hey, you go up and then you kind of re-enter coming down more like a traditional re-entry vehicle. We're saying, hey, let's get the space um, tether to support all the weight and bring it down. So we were focusing on that. But why are we doing that? So if you really look at it, it's a spacefaring society. If you're going to go settle space or have a space economy of some sort, you have to have some sort of interaction with Earth. Wealth has to be transferred back and forth between Earth. It's going to cost trillions in transportation costs alone to do the Mars mission. I calculated at about $4.2 trillion. So somehow that's going to have to pay for itself. So what do you do there? So the down Earth capability to support the space settlement is mainly what I was targeting was asteroid mining and bringing back the precious metals. That's what makes sense. Don't bring back the whole asteroid. Don't bring back a bunch of iron and everything else. Just focus on the platinum groups and the gold and that kind of things, the precious metals. So then we looked at the financial aspects of what that means. Like, how does the space elevator pay for itself? What kind of pricing model can you use? And then look at some of the challenges the down Earth creates for ourselves. So if you really look at the missions, now I'm hearing something new on the space solar power. I guess you don't need that much mass going up, but that was some data I got from, I think, Pete Lamb in an earlier briefing a couple of years ago. But if you look at the rocket cost in billions and the number of rocket equivalents you have to have, again, Falcon 9 Heavy is the most affordable one right now. If you look at what's going on with Starship, it's barely maybe proving itself, but you don't really know what its capability is, and you don't know what the cost function looks like. And even though that this is what they quoted, if you look at a SpaceX, but my understanding is the billing is about 6 times as much. So you're talking just to do a Mars mission, you're talking around $4.2 trillion just in transportation costs. A lot of these other ones are lots of money, and it takes a lot of years to do it. And to me, both of these things, the cost and the time required to actually do these total mission profiles, uh, you know, ain't gonna get it. You're not gonna get there with rockets on the outbound side. And you really don't know what you're gonna have on the down Earth side. If you really look at it, you really don't have a lot of return capability with any reentry vehicle. So again, it's focusing on the cost. You know, it's tons of money. You have to pay for itself. If you also look at just not the transportation cost, but I was just taking a target of about $1 trillion going to Mars. So overall, you got to pay back $5.2 trillion in transportation costs and whatever the near-term supplies are going to be to get that Mars up and going. And if you look at it, they're going to be in survival mode. They're going to be trying to build places to live, grow food, make it happen. They're not going to be doing day one mining and trying to ship something back. It's going to have to be some other thing that's bringing back the wealth to help pay for that settlement. And if you look at the different options, the only ones that really get into the trillions of dollars is some sort of rare earth metals that have some sort of value that need to be shipped back. So the near Earth asteroids that are metal centric, we need to figure out how to harvest those in a relatively quick time frame, bring those back, and then bring back those that amount of mass back to Earth. Okay, and if you really look at it, I just looked at this one asteroid. These numbers of concentrations, I know Edwards said, he came up with some numbers from somewhere, but he never quoted where he got them from. So what I did is he looked at iron and cobalt and something else, maybe platinum. But I looked at something that came out of Colorado School of Mines. They had some pretty good assessments of a variety of different asteroids, metallics they found here on Earth and the compositions. There's a lot of other data out there that tries to use imaging, but I'm wondering how accurate those are. So what I did is I just took the most conservative one that I found out of that report and looked at the concentrations and said, well, if I just focus on the precious metals, there's about $71 trillion in precious metals on this one asteroid. So if we can bring that stuff back, it'll more than pay the bills for Mars and other things too. So, but we have to be able to bring that back and bring it down to Earth. Hopefully not too quickly, otherwise we'll flood the market and you don't know what the price elasticity of these metals are going to be once you start bringing it back a lot more than annual world production. But the thing I was looking at is how do you make this work contractually? So if you're looking at any kind of space settlement that needs capital, you also have that link contractually to some sort of asteroid mining operation. And those contracts that they might not be co-located. They might be half a solar system apart, but the asteroid mining operation pays for the capital markets investment in both of these. It has to pay for the space settlement and for the asteroid mining operation. So that's kind of the business model that I think would work. The thing is, when you talk about reentry vehicles, if you look at like the space shuttle, which is not bad bring back capability, but to bring back what I'm targeting is about 640 metric tons per day. You would need a fleet of around 4,000 space shuttles to do it based upon the recycle period of a space shuttle. And that also means you'd also have to launch about one every 45 minutes to do that mission every day, 24 hours to get the thing up there to then bring back stuff. So reentry vehicles, I know other people are saying, well, just drop it. And yeah, you drop a lot of that type of tonnage somewhere, you're eventually going to do some damage. And you're also going to waste some of the product. You know, I know everybody has a lot of concepts, but to me, a safer way is to know exactly where it's going to land to control the reentry and don't burn up a lot of precious metals. So to me, it's the reentry vehicles just can't cut it. Also, if you look at the rail car size, number of trips per day, it kind of sets the stage of how big should the rail car be. Again, I'm looking at trade space. Like I'm thinking that the real space elevator should be somewhere between 100 to 700 metric ton bring back capability versus what we're currently doing is around 14 tons. So to me, you need something a lot bigger to handle that much mass coming back. And again, it gets back down to the precious metals that you can bring back and the costs that, or how much money you can be making as you bring that stuff back. So you also want to target the outbound goal of 1 million. And to me, it's the bring back is about 640, but to have a viable space economy, a viable space settlement, at least for when you start really getting going, you need to start thinking about 1 million kilograms a day, both up and down, not just up. You need to bring stuff back. Whether you're talking about geomanufacturing, space mining, bringing back precious metals from there, you're going to have to do a lot of down earth stuff. Otherwise, you don't have a real economy. And, you know, you just can't always look up. You need to bring it down too. So dual pricing model is where I came up with. I know a lot of times people talk about space elevators are really good. We're going to really drop the cost. And I'm like, all right, well, if you really look at it, paying back your investment or paying back whatever you're doing, if you start looking at the really drop in the dollars per kilogram going up, you're going negative if you start going below about 500. I know a lot of people are quoting a lot lower numbers than that. And I'm like, well, you know, depends upon your business model, how much your investment is. A lot of different factors go into this. So this is just one of the ones I was approaching is that on the way up, you're spending a lot of money, and you got to be careful about dropping it too much, or you're going to be losing your shirt. Also, when you start looking at the bring back capability, how am I doing on time, Dennis? 5 minutes?
You
I'll
have,
take that as you.
yes, 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. When you start looking at the bring back capability, pretty much that reentry vehicles just can't handle it, or they're going to be so cost prohibitive, you're not going to do it. So really what you have is a space elevator pretty much is going to have a monopoly on bring back capability. And you can charge whatever you want. And to me, I don't know what the numbers are for like I didn't do the numbers for like a 4,000 uh, fleet of space shuttles and the bring back capable of that, but that's a ridiculous number. So anyways, what I was looking at is if we go below 1,000, we're still making money down to 300. This is just on the bring back for the Mars mission. So I started looking at, well, what if you have a dual pricing model? We want to encourage space development. We want to encourage people going off into space. At the same time, we kind of have a monopoly on bring back capability. So what could we do as a trade space to say, hey, what if the outbound I lose money on? Like I said, below 500, I'm losing money if I just consider outbound. But if I say, hey, I'm making a lot of money on the down earth thing, and if, say, I need to have an annual return of 25%, then I can drop the price as, I have a price mix that I can play with to get that 25%. And that's the beauty of this concept of we want to encourage things. Now, it'll take a little while for the wealth to start coming back. So you might have to charge the higher prices at the beginning. Excuse me. So you might have to charge higher prices outbound at the beginning, but once the mining operation comes back, you can start dropping the outbound pricing, really encouraging people to go off into space, whether it's space tourism, actually settling space, living out in space, space economy, whatever it might be. The outbound stuff is the trickier part because that's where all the cost is, especially with rockets and everything else like that. That's the comparison. So you get a lot of leeway as to what the pricing mix can be between outbound pricing and down Earth pricing to still make a really good return. Now, this is just the Mars mission. You start adding Mars and Moon. I looked at these missions as being over a 20-year time frame. And if you look at it, you're making a little bit more on the outbound mission. So you make a little bit more money on that. So, but it's very, very similar as to what your profit margins can be, even though both of these curves are up a little bit. When I started doing on the solar energy, solar energy, I didn't do the sunshade. The sunshade was something different. So I was looking at the solar energy mission. You start saying a lot more stuff off again in the same 20-year period. So you can talk about extremely high profit margins and a lot of revenue in billions of dollars. So to me, that there's a dual pricing model that we need to start thinking about. We need to start considering the down earth problem and saying we can capitalize on that to bring the wealth back. Geomanufacturing, precious metals, whatever it might be, that's the real value because that makes us have flexibility in the prices we charge outbound to actually build the settlements, to actually build the space economy as an outbound function to begin with. But you have to be able to pay it back. You got to bring stuff back. And that's where you make your money on a space elevator is the bring back capability. So if you look at all the different missions, I just looked at these three, and you just look at how big the cargo capacities could be and how many transports you have to do. The bigger the capacity, the fewer the transports you have to be, so it might be a lot more manageable. And to me, if you start looking at reliability, maintainability, all that kind of thing, is it better to have a bigger platform and travel the tether less? Do you get less in wear and tear on the tether by doing that? Or are you better off with something lighter and just have a lot more things going up and down? So this is, to me, I was looking at this as a trade space. What's our trade space to make the space economy actually work? So the business model to make it work, we have to consider that any space tether system is going to have a very high fixed cost. And if you can really drive down the variable cost, then you have a winner. That's the mix is you're going to have high variable cost. You have high variable cost. I think it's going to be a lot harder to be profitable and might be harder to make it work. So a dual pricing model adds a lot of flexibility. And again, with a lot of this stuff, payload, and volume. That's what you need to start working on. And that's why the space shuttle never really left is their pricing model was such that the volume they thought they were going to do never materialized because they were way too expensive. Some of the
1
technical
minute, Stephen?
Okay, I'm almost there. The down Earth gravitational forces consider regenerative electrical power. So there's a lot of power. You either use it, store it, or transmit it. The inefficiencies in the electrical power systems could create a lot of waste heat. Got to figure out how to manage that. You have safety issues in the down Earth failure modes. You got to consider those things. And what is the best vehicle design for transporting tons of precious metals or geo manufacturing or whatever it might be? To me, the space elevator has a lot of flexibility in the volumes and the shaping that it has, as long as you try to keep it pretty much you don't want to put any torque on the tether per se, but as long as you control the weight and balance of it, you have a lot of flexibility in the volume. And after this, when you start looking at all this, well, what are the new technologies that are needed? Okay. I think that's it.
Thank you. Questions, please. Paul?
Yeah, small question. Does your figures take into account that if you dump that much precious metal, the cost is significantly reduced? Right now, gold is going for $3,500 an ounce, but if you dump a whole lot of gold on the market, it's going to go down to $1.98. Does your figures take that into account?
The basic numbers were on the current market price of things. Like I said, is you have to really look at the price elasticity of what would happen if you increase the volume of that. So it really gets back down to, in certain materials, certain precious materials that aren't heavily traded, like the platinum and the gold groups are, you're going to have some sensitivity there, but other places don't really use a lot of those materials. So if you all of a sudden have an abundance of some of these rare earth materials, who would start using it? So you might find that the price dumps to begin with, but then starts picking back up as new uses are envisioned and actually applied to those materials. So you really don't know what the end effect is, or you could be like De Beers and just meter out what you want. But to me, it was more of we need to have a tremendous bring back capability. If you bring it back, then you can store it, and then, instead of doing it immediately, just partial it out over time. So,
Okay, okay, thank you.
Okay, but what the net effect is of hundreds of percent beyond global production, yearly production is, you really don't know what's going to happen. It's going to have an impact, but what's the overall impact? And I think that it really depends upon which material we're talking about. Oh, and by the way, one of the technical challenges I'm going to talk about tomorrow is the electrical energy and power needs for these heavy lift devices. So that's my talk tomorrow. Just a teaser.
Okay.
Anybody else have any questions or? Oh,
Blaze.
So, if I understood correctly, you're talking about tying, launching for, say, Mars missions to bringing back precious metals. With the kind of returns on investment you're seeing, what's going to prevent a competitor from saying, "Hey, I'll, bring back those precious metals without, providing anything for the Mars colony, and I'm going to be able to undercut your price and eat your lunch."
well, I think you have to look at why would they want to undercut a price. If you're making money, you're making money. But to me, it's a matter of, is this something that you kind of enact by law? We talk about space legal stuff, how do you do that? The main thing is that Mars in and by itself, if you have a bunch of people going off to Mars and they have to pay for it, is everybody going up there going to be a billionaire where they can foot the bill? Is there going to be some sort of philanthropic person that has trillions and trillions of dollars and says, "Hey, I'll pay it for you"? It's like, no, they have to find some way of paying the bills. You're going to have a mix of people. You might have Elon Musk up there, but you're going to have a bunch of blue collar guys building all the places to live and wiring it up, and the HVAC people and plumbers and all sorts of things. Construction workers, track hoe operators, we need electrically driven track hoes out of a Caterpillar. So,
Okay, so the idea would be this is such an important thing for humanity that we give a monopoly to the company doing this so that they can, fund the Mars settlement while funding it using, bringing back precious metals, and competitors can't enter that landscape. Okay.
well, or you just say that mining operation is going to help pay for multiple settlements. If you got $70 trillion and you can keep half of that wealth, a quarter of that wealth, it's more than enough to pay for Mars, moon, solar. It can pay for a lot of things, depending upon the price elasticity of those materials when you bring them back, and over what time frame too. I was targeting 20. I was just trying to be aggressive, and I targeted 20 years for all the different missions I looked at. I figured, if you're going to drag this out for 100 years, people lose interest. If you really look at like Musk and those people, he said, hey, yeah, we can get it to you in about 50, 100 years. He's losing interest. He won't do it. Anybody with money, anybody that's going to make something happen, you have to show how you're going to do it in about 20-year time frame. And I was just taking this on as a challenge to say, well, could you do it in 20 years? What would it look like? How big would it be? How much power do you need? And I think that's the thing we have to start looking at. If we're serious about going to space, we have to make it attractive. We have to come up with real requirements. And we have to figure out, well, okay, where are the real challenges that we need to have new invention, new technology on? And that's some of what I'm going to talk about tomorrow, is that, you can come up with all these requirements, say, it'd be great if we could get this. Now it's a matter of, does the technology exist? Can we just upscale the current technology, or do we need something brand new? And I don't care what it looks like. Pete was talking about single crystal graphene and all that stuff, and other people are talking about nanotubes. And I'm like, I don't care if it's compressed bunny turds, all I care about is what it does and what characteristics it has. What it actually is, I don't care. As long as it has the right properties and the right performance that I need to make this stuff work. That's what I've done in industry for a long time, is figure out, what do we need? Technology needs documents is what we usually call them.